So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this virtual payments webinar in partnership with Connexpay. I have some issues. Okay, here we go. Thank you for joining us. Before we begin, let me remind you that we have 60 minutes. Please keep your lines muted at all times. We are recording this event, so don't worry. You get a link to the recording afterwards. There's a chat available in the Q&A for you to answer all your questions after this presentation, at the end of the presentation. Your feedback, as always, is important, and we'll be sharing a link to a small survey that we'll really appreciate if you could fill it out for us to improve these events and present to you things that matter to you. Post-event highlights will also be sent to your inbox later on, so you have all the information that you need. Today's agenda is an introduction to virtual payments, Sabre virtual payments, Connexpay, and then at the end, the Q&A. Our presenters are Warren Kentridge from Sabre Virtual Payments and Erica Stewart from Connexpay. And before we begin, we'd like to share a couple of questions with you to get to understand a little bit better your knowledge, your current knowledge about the topic. So if you could please answer the questions. The first one is, are you using virtual cards today? That's our first question. If you could please fill the poll, we can get to know you a little bit better and your knowledge about the topic. Okay, a 67% replied that no. Oh, now you have a 50-50. Things change fast. Okay, we have a 50-50 of people that is using virtual cards today. Okay, let's move on to the second question. Is how would you describe your understanding of the virtual cards world? As low, medium, or strong? Please send your questions. Your answers, not your questions, sorry. Okay, so we have 56% of people with low knowledge, and then 44% of people with medium knowledge. And then last, is your agency a merchant of record today? Please answer if yes or no. We have 100%. No, we are 67% of no, 33% of yes. Okay. Someone replied that she's not sure if she's a merchant of record, and after this webinar, you will be sure if you're a merchant of record. Okay. So let's move on to an introduction to virtual payments. Warren, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice to virtually meet everybody. Thank you all for making the time today. So I head up sales for Sabre Virtual Payments. I've been with Sabre for a good 2 years now, and I come from a issuer sales background as well as a GDS before my issuer experience. So got a good understanding of the travel industry and your business models, and hopefully going to be giving a bit more background about virtual cards and how they could hopefully benefit all of your agencies today. So just to start, generally, as I saw from the poll, there's not everybody uses virtual cards or understands how they work, what it means to use a virtual card in general. So I'm just going to give a little bit of insight. So as you can see in front of you, we have an example of a virtual card. I've got a physical card in front of me, which is essentially a physical version of a virtual card. So all of you are using cards. And if you ever have any questions about how a virtual card works, just think about how your normal card works, and you'll probably answer most of your questions, just as a FYI. But When you think about virtual cards for the travel industry, is really that they've been designed mostly as a protection mechanism for payments. That's where they originate from. And of course, they come with a lot more benefits than that. But the way the virtual cards are created is essentially for a specific payment within your travel business from a business to business perspective. So I'm going to give you an example. When you want to say make a payment to an airline or hotel, any travel merchant really, and that particular payment is say maybe $100, and you got to make that payment tomorrow, you would then be able to create a virtual card at $100 for tomorrow, which means that if you specify that virtual card for those parameters, then if your card tries to be used the day after tomorrow, if you don't allow for that, it will decline. If somebody tries to use the card for more than $100, and if you specified $100 on the card, it will decline. So the whole point of it is to be able to create a payment for a payment that's specific and has a set parameters, so that no misuse could ever occur on that particular card. That is ultimately the point. A virtual card is a 16-digit card number, as you can see, with a unique CVV and expiration date. Each card number has a bin range. If you don't already know, it's the first 6 digits of the card that is static, and the rest of that is then rotated. So you never have the same card number used twice, which means that that card number is specific to that payment and not recycled. If anyone tries to use the card number for anything else outside of what you specified it for, it will decline as well. So essentially giving you full protection of your payments today. And with that comes some other benefits that I will dive into just a little bit. So if you could just go to the next slide, please. So today, as a business, more than likely you're using one of these payment methods, be it bank transfers, wire transfers, whatever you want to call it. Your airline settlement plan in America, ARC, in European region, we call it BSP as an example. And then, of course, your normal physical cards, be the business card, customer cards. Those are generally the 3 types of payment methods that we see from a travel perspective. And in each of those kind of comes with a way of using them, and they come with their own sort of benefits and features associated to each of them. And what we find and how we sell virtual cards across all different kind of platforms is that they tick all the boxes. Virtual cards in general ticks all the boxes. So if you're not using virtual cards today, then you're essentially losing some benefits in some shape or form, no matter which way you look at it. I'll start from the bottom and I'll sort of work my way up. So if you think about automation, we've integrated the solution on our end, and I'll explain the solution in more detail so that will make more sense. But it's integrated into Sabre today. So if you wanted to say make a booking in Sabre, you create a PNR, and you want to then pay that airline, instead of actually paying that airline through a normal process with any of these 3 channels, you'd be able to use a virtual card through one of our issuers to be able to settle that payment. So that's a sense of automation on its own. There are other types of automation that we can discuss in more detail on separate calls, but ultimately virtual cards can be completely automated in terms of how they are used. If you think about automation in general, bank transfers are completely manual. There's no automation for bank transfers in general. The airline settlement plan is a sense of automation to give you that way of, it's ultimately you're paying that bill at the end of the month or whatever cycle that you have in place. And then for plastic cards, again, it's another manual intervention. You might be able to lodge a card in the best case scenario, in the GDS, for example. So the next thing I would say is the rebates that you get. So virtual cards provide the users with a rebate. It's as simple as that. You get a percentage of the transactional amount back into your account every month. That is a cash amount that goes into your account that you can do with the business or yourself, whatever that you like. With bank transfers, there's no rewards. As far as I've seen, you don't get a reward back from the money you send. So you're losing money there straight away. The BSP or ARC, again, no rewards. You're simply getting a credit, and that's the benefit. And then plastic cards, there's a sense of rewards through sort of point systems that you might get. In some cases, if you're lucky, there's a cashback. But mostly we see the point systems that you essentially at the liberty of that platform. You know, you can go buy a TV or something at the end of the month or an airline ticket. But for this case, you get cash to use towards your own P&L or whatever it is that you need to use it for. So it's a very strong benefit from that perspective. And then, of course, protection against fraud is what I mentioned around the parameters of creating a card. And that kind of protection you don't really get anywhere else. There is a second step to that, which we call chargebacks. So if anything actually had to happen to the card for whatever reason, or a payment you made does not, you didn't get your service, for example, you have full chargeback rights from the schemes with the issuer for all your virtual cards. The only other sense of that protection is through a plastic card as well. And I think, if you ever had any fraud on a plastic card, you might find it almost impossible to get your money back if you actually get your money back. So it might be there, but it's very difficult with us. It's very straightforward. It's part of the service, and you go straight to your issuer. In this case, we're talking about Connexpay today, and they will be providing that full chargebacks, and they would process that for you. Then another point is very important to a lot of financial departments within a travel agency is your reconciliation. So we have, through virtual cards, third level data, vast amount of information available to you in a transactional type report. There's additional features that we're going to talk about your reports from both sides, myself on Sabre side with Confirmapay and on Connexpay as well, in terms of the reports that you get. So you will have more information than you can ever use in terms of reconciliation. You don't get that anywhere else, period. And then, of course, when you make transfers abroad, generally speaking, there's a cost to doing that. And you'll find that the foreign exchange fees on virtual cards are the lowest you'll experience anywhere else. I think, the difference on ARC is that you don't experience that because you're settling locally with them. But anything outside of that and internationally, you would be paying an FX when you try to pay abroad. And that can go up to 2%, if not more. And with issuers on virtual cards, it is substantially lower than normal market rates. So there's potentially a large cost savings there, combating your potentially low amount of data for reconciliation, and improving the way you generate cards, not only manually, but automatically, and ultimately bring some rewards to the business, maybe improving revenue streams that you might not have today. So I hope I haven't said too much on this one, but we can move to the next slide, please. So just to kind of give you a perspective on the parties involved in such a flow. Obviously, we have yourselves, the travel agency, that would be the owner of an account to use to issue virtual cards. You would issue cards to a merchant, be it airline, hotel, car, and that merchant will essentially acquire the card. In some cases, you could use the same on your side, but we're talking about, so the settlement of that card will be from the bank itself of the merchant. And then, of course, the issuer that's generating your cards, in this case, Connexpay, they do the card generation from the schemes, and then the schemes themselves, who obviously provide the products. And we'll talk a little bit more into that to make it make more sense. But those are essentially the stakeholders within the overall travel payment space. Next slide, please. So I'm going to hand over to Erica because essentially chargebacks are going to be covered by Connexpay for here, and then I'll jump back in again and then hand over to Erica for the final piece. Over to you,
Perfect.
Erica.
Thank you, Warren. Hello, everyone. I'm Erica Stewart with Connexpay. I've been at Connexpay for over 3 years now, but I've been in the payments industry for about 20 years now, specifically focused on travel for the last 8 of those 20 years. So on chargeback, there can be 2 separate chargebacks when working with Connexpay. First, what I'll address is the one that you have coming in from a traveler. So if you are acting as merchant of record, and I do have a slide on that later, so hopefully I can answer all the questions on are you acting as merchant of record or not. But on the merchant acquiring side, where you are acting as merchant of record, a chargeback would be filed from the perspective of the traveler. So it could be that they didn't receive the service, or it could be friendly fraud, that they didn't like the meal on the airline or on their flight. But whatever that may be, we help you fight chargebacks from that perspective. We have a chargeback management system that we've built, as well as a chargeback management team that will help you fight chargebacks and win chargebacks from that perspective. But one of the big benefits of being able to issue a virtual card payment to your suppliers is the ability for you to issue a chargeback to that supplier. This was especially important during COVID. It was really difficult, and I know I'm not telling you guys anything that you didn't experience firsthand, but it was difficult to get your money back from your supplier so that you could give that money back to your travelers. With the virtual card, you have the ability to issue that chargeback to the supplier in the event that you need your money back quicker. So again, another benefit of issuing a virtual card versus issuing, say, a traditional check or something of that nature, you have more control over that supplier payment relationship with the virtual cards than you do with any of the other payment methods that Warren went over in the previous slide. Warren, back to you. No, back to me. So, merchant of record, what that means is that you are owning the payment experience for the traveler. So, if you're not acting as merchant of record today, Warren mentioned ARC, you may be passing that traveler's card that they present to you for payment directly through to ARC, and then the airline takes that payment. When you act as merchant of record, you take the payment directly from the consumer and you take that payment in, and you can acquire that through Connexpay through our merchant acquiring. While there is a cost associated to that, we understand that, but it also provides some additional benefits to you than if you were to not act as merchant of record. So in the merchant of record experience, you control that traveler's experience that they have when they book. What we all want is for those travelers to come back and book with us time and time again. If they have a good experience, they are much more likely to come back than if they don't have a good experience. If you pass the card through directly to the airline and they are acting as merchant of record, you don't have a lot of control over what happens. Also, another is the pricing. If you have any markup or commission that you are charging today and you're passing the card through, there's two separate transactions that traveler's receiving on their monthly card statement. The likelihood of them recognizing both transactions is less, and that therefore increases the risk for chargebacks. So with Connexpay, we give you the ability for you to take and put the markup in with the price of the air or the hotel or the package or whatever it may be that you're selling to that traveler. You can make it into one cohesive flow, and that helps to eliminate chargebacks. Also, when you are acting as merchant of record, you are able to have more insight and help to control cash flow, as well as protect your revenue. So hopefully that helps explain the difference in whether you're acting as merchant of record today or if you're not acting as merchant of record. Next slide, please. And now back to you, Warren.
Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you. So we talked about what a virtual card means, how it works, and some of the benefits. So I really want to kind of dive into a little bit about where we fit in and why we're both on this call today. So don't need to introduce Sabre as a business. I think everybody on the call is probably using Sabre, so you understand we're a global distribution system as our legacy offer. And we've been traditionally selling Confirm Pay solution for almost 2 decades now. So Confirm Pay technology comes from a TMC background itself. So it was built for the travel industry. And August of last year, Sabre acquired Confirma and now own the business as a Sabre company. It is still agnostic in what it does and how it works and the parties involved. But the technology that's Confirma essentially has some 75 APIs into 75 banks around the world. And of that, we work directly with a handful of those. And that is why I've asked Connexpay to to talk to us today as well, because they are our primary offer in the United States and the Canadian market as well. So with that in mind, we essentially are not an issuer, Sabre Virtual Payments, but we provide the technology for our issuer partners to generate virtual cards. And that technology is obviously integrated into Sabre. So it's like a one-stop shop with everything for, payment related. I'm about to click next. So Gemini could move on to the next one. Perfect. So to dive into a little bit the products that you would be looking at. In America, there's what we call the corporate purchasing card, which is primarily the card that everyone will be using, ultimately probably the card that you will be using, which is a standardized product by both MasterCard and Visa, as the two schemes that are on offer here. But there are a wide range of products available to you, especially if you start to talk about issuing internationally, where you have schemes, actual product ranges, which ranges in several different kind of card products by each of them. So I don't think I'm going to dive into each one for this call, but it's good to know that there are multiple products available. If anything, all the products by MasterCard and Visa are essentially going to be available to you through Connexpay. And what's key about Connexpay is they have over 60 bins that are being used for this program. So essentially those first 6 digits that I mentioned earlier will be rotated as well, which kind of brings a unique way of making payments, specifically thinking on traditional airlines, where they are more commonly known to stop sort of virtual cards in general. But we don't really see that with Connexpay, and especially don't see that at all in the USA, which is fantastic news. But yes, MasterCard and Visa are the two major schemes with their product ranges. So how would you do this in terms of creating and generating the virtual cards? You would have the portal that you would be able to log in, and you would have your Connexpay account right there and then, and you could generate a card within a few seconds to pay anything anywhere within the travel and entertainment space. There are some benefits about the portal with user, so your users can have thresholds, you can have first and second level approval processes for each user, and it starts to become really interesting in how manual users actually work on the portal. And then, of course, we have the Sabre integration there for anything that is an active segment in Sabre, where you want to use the form of payment as a virtual card number. We'll probably talk more about it with Erica's piece on it, but essentially the model is what we call a pre-funded model. So your accounts will that you open with Connexpay, you would have to have money in those accounts to be able to generate these virtual cards. So as long as there's funds available in your Connexpay account, you can then create cards from the portal, or the GDS collectively as you see fit. Thank you. The next one. So this is a sample demo of the integration. Gemini, I just have to click play there. But essentially, all it does is it shows you after creating your PNR, you have one extra entry, which is this entry you're seeing on your screen right now. And we don't need to dive into any more than that, because that 5- display VCN error is the entry that you would use over and above your booking process. So in terms of steps taken, that is pretty much it. There is nothing more that what you would need to do, and what they're showing you here is just how it all looks in the background. So you have a validation that happens in the background. The card is essentially authorized same day if it's done this way with traditional air. We do have this for low-cost carriers. We have this for hotels, and it's all available in Sabre, which is the point of us having this call today. As you can see, there's line items there showing the auth activity. You will have a deployment identifier in there, as you can see at the bottom there. And that deployment identifier will help you track that card and the transactions on that card if you need to. Ultimately, you can pull your reports and you can see everything from that report anyway, but it's just kind of giving you that sense of what's available in the system. And I'm guessing you all on the call probably know what's going on here more than I do. So there you can see the form of payment is a masked card number to show you that the card number is not actually visible. But I think we can stop that from there and just move on to the next slide, and we can have the questions at the end. Perfect. Okay, so in terms of reporting, I mentioned before that you have third level data, right? And we have this transactional type report where you will see all the transactions that have been settled across all your payments that you do within Confirma through Connexpay. Connexpay will also have their own reportings that you might want to use for different purposes, and they'll cover that off separately. But this is very user-friendly. This is a snapshot of how it looks actually on Snap. It's called Snap, the report. Very user-friendly. You would get training on this, of course, and you'd be able to identify and look at any transactions at any point in time. It's completely live. As I said, everything that you could possibly want to see is probably in here, especially if you're booking air, you'll get the airline data all in here. But if there's something that you're not seeing that you want to see, there is 40 plus custom reference fields that you could then use. They could be made mandatory, and you'd be able to have that visible then in your report. So as many as you need to, then you can either put them mandatory or keep them free text, and your users would have to then obviously input that data. This is available also through an SFTP mailbox if that is of interest. This will also give you a consolidated view. So if by any chance any of you have accounts that you want to continue to use over and above the Connexpay account, which we're talking about, you would, if they are connected, you would have them visible in here as well. So that's just one of the key kind of differentiators that Confirma have today. To the next is Erica. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Warren. All right. So just to back up with what Warren said, so obviously you're going to receive a lot of data from Sabre and Confirma, but in addition to that, Connexpay has reporting as well. One thing we do is deliver a daily accounting report. So it's going to give you a very detailed summary each and every day of what happened in the previous day. If you can see here, this is for an agency. Of course, it's some dummy information, but for an agency that's utilizing the full Connexpay flow. So what that means is they're both doing acquiring and issuing services through Connexpay, but it gives you a really detailed synopsis of what happened as far as what you took in, as far as cards from travelers, ACH from travelers, what you purchased or issued a virtual card for ACH and card. There's just a lot of detail in there, what your total activity was, your beginning cash balance, your ending cash balance, hopefully everything that you need to be able to operate on a day-to-day basis. But this does come out each and every day in the morning, delivered automatically, and you set up who you would like to receive that. Then you also have the ability to pull this data throughout the day through our Bridge portal, which is the Connexpay portal that we have. Next slide, please, Gamina. Thank you. So this gives just an overview, more of a visual of what the flow would look like with Connexpay for utilizing our full solution of merchant acquiring and virtual card supplier payment issuing. So our solution was built specifically with the travel industry in mind. We were started about 6 years ago, and we have over 200 agencies that utilize the Connexpay technology today. So if we start from the left and go to the right, from the blue to the green, this is assuming that you've taken in a payment of $1,000 from a traveler. So they can either come directly to a website, or they can come to an agent over the phone, or however it is that you have bookings made today. We can facilitate both. But so what we would do is they would input their card details either on the website, or you could send a hosted payment page link to where they could manually input their card details. Our first line of defense is we have a fraud detection partner called Count. That's Count with a K. They're an Equifax company, and they help us to be able to help reduce chargebacks before they even start. So the way Count works is they produce an Omni score based off of the card details that they receive. It's based off of a score of 0 to 100. The higher the score, the less likely the transaction is to be fraud. The lower the score, the more likely it is to be fraud. You set this score however you want and feel comfortable. You can make changes to it as you see necessary. We do suggest that it starts around 60. So anything that scores 60 or above, you would go ahead and you would become merchant of record on that transaction. You do also have the ability, if it falls below the score threshold that you send, you have the ability to come in and override it. If you have known customers that you always want to be able to accept transactions from or something of that nature, there's a lot of flexibility that you can put in place with Count. It's going to look at where the card, the IP address that you're receiving the card details from. It's going to look and do an address verification. There's a lot of data that it's going to look at before it gives you returns an approval. But that approval is received fairly quickly within seconds. So it's not like it takes a long time for that process to happen. But we offer this at no additional charge to you. It's part of our commitment to working with our agency partners to help reduce chargebacks and fraud. So once you pass through Count and you receive a go-ahead, then we would acquire the funds in real time. So with a traditional merchant acquirer, they require that you set up either a line of credit based off of what your volume is based off of when you apply for an account with a traditional merchant acquirer, or it could be that they set up the ability for you to set up a reserve so that you can acquire funds with them. With Connexpay, we don't require either. The reason why is because we like to enable cash flow optimization through this process. So we utilize the incoming traveler funds and we use those to fund the outgoing supplier payment. Again, going back to the fact that we give you real-time availability to those funds, with a traditional merchant acquirer, you have to wait 24, 48, or 72 hours for those funds to settle into your account. With Connexpay, like I said, real-time availability to help with cash flow. Once you take in those funds, then you have the ability to issue out a virtual card if you need to at that moment, or if you need to wait and pay that supplier at a later time, those funds can sit in your account and then can be used to issue out or can go back to your main operating account for other expenses outside of this flow. So in this example, you took in $1,000 for the traveler, but the booking was only worth $950, and you went ahead and you marked up the $50 for your retention of commission or markup. So the traveler sees that it's $1,000. You have the ability to customize the statement description so that they see an agency name, or if you have an alternative name that you go by, you can do that. And we also usually suggest that you put a phone number in there. That way, if they have questions, they can call you directly. But once you've taken in the $950, then you can issue out a virtual card to that supplier. It could be multiple suppliers. You could have a virtual card for an airline, a hotel, and a car rental, or it could just be for one supplier. Whatever your business is, our process will allow for you to work in that manner today. Thank you. So again, going back to the benefits of Connexpay, we bring in 3 different components: merchant acquiring, a fraud provider, as well as a virtual card issuer, all into one cohesive payment flow, one agreement, one set of folks to reach out to if you have issues. That in itself is a huge benefit that Connexpay brings. We also are able to provide you the reconciliation into that one flow. Whereas if you have a merchant acquirer that's one provider and a virtual card issuer that's a separate provider, you're having to do 2 sets of reconciliation. So this really helps to free up some time that you and your internal teams are spending on reconciliation each and every day, weekly, monthly, however that may be. So again, we give you the ability to accept the payments directly from the traveler. We give you the fraud protection at no additional charge to you. We will be a lower cost for your acceptance and becoming merchant of record because we do have the full flow. We're not looking like a traditional merchant acquirer. They only make their money from merchant acquiring. We make money from the full flow, so that way we can reduce costs and optimize the amount of rebate that you earn each and every month. We have the ability to accept credit, debit cards, as well as Google Pay and Apple Pay and ACH, and give you immediate access to all of those different payment types. In the middle, it basically is a reiteration of most everything that I stated previously. We don't require that you pre-fund or that you set up a line of credit when you utilize our merchant acquiring solutions. We can give you back daily access to your markup and commission, or you can choose to let that sit in your Connexpay account. One payment reconciliation flow, and one integration, one contract, one agreement, one set of folks to reach out to for support. And then on the virtual cards, we have a process that I've not spoken about yet. So in a slide that Warren went over previously, it showed that there was both access to MasterCard as well as Visa as far as issuing. We also have access to 60 plus bins throughout the world. That's super important when it comes to the acceptance from your suppliers, especially from airlines in particular. If any of you guys are paying airlines, and I'm certain the majority of you are, you know that sometimes acceptance with virtual cards can be iffy. With Connexpay, we've not received any ADMs. We also, out of the $10 billion that we processed in payments in 2022, the bulk of that was within the airline segment. Again, no ADMs. And we also have about 160 plus airlines that we paid in the past month throughout the world. So our airline acceptance is very high. We also help provide the fraud and security that other payment types aren't able to offer through our virtual cards. And we also have USD, GBP, Euro, and CAD capabilities. All right, next slide, please. This just recaps all the payment types that we have for pay in and pay out. I think I've hit on the majority of those. For pay in, for payout, we have virtual cards, physical cards. Push to card is a bit different. That means that if you have someone that you need to send money to, they can input their debit card or credit card details, and you can push those funds out directly to them. It's not as much of a use case in the travel industry, but it's something that we do offer. Mobile wallet capability will be coming in 2024. Our global VCC is the ability to originate funds in USD and push out into any currency that's local to the supplier that you're paying without additional cross-border or FX fees. We also have ACH and bank transfers are coming in the next year. All right, next slide, please. So this kind of reiterates the fact of supplier acceptance as far as airlines that I was just speaking about. Again, we paid a lot of money out to suppliers last year. These are just some top names of suppliers that we've paid. But if there are certain airlines that you do have questions about, I'm able to pull the data and share that, some statistics with you if there are airlines that you're concerned about. All right, next slide, please. All right. And as far as next steps, so if any of this sounds interesting, we'd love to be able to schedule a call directly with you and find out what you're doing today, where you may be having some issues or pain points, and how Sabre and Connexpay can help eliminate some of that. So we'll be reaching out to you, but we can also reach out to us and we'll schedule a call, and then we can see if it works and start the process after that.